Movie stars don't come much bigger than Bruce Willis was in the early 1990s. Die Hard had turned him into a mega action star overnight, and Die Hard 2, Die Harder, had made even more money. But, like Icarus, Bruce Willis was about to fly a little too close to the sun with Hudson Hawk, a movie that was supposed to be an all-time blockbuster but ended up becoming a punchline. Even still, it's a movie that's aged like fine wine, and it's our best movie you never saw.
So the Hudson Hawk is finally getting out. Remember all the reporters that were here when you came in? World's greatest cat burglar. Now who gives a fuck?
Flashback to 1991. Bruce Willis was arguably at the peak of his fame. Moonlighting was all done, and Die Hard had made him into one of the biggest action stars in town, a status reaffirmed by the smash success of its sequel, Die Hard 2, Die Harder. In between, he even made a little movie called In Country, directed by Norman Jewison, which got great reviews, even though it didn't really make much of a dent at the box office. He did have one pretty big flop, though, in 1990, The Bonfire of the Vanities, which co-starred Tom Hanks and Melanie Griffith, and was directed by Brian De Palma. But nobody really blamed him for that. As long as he was doing action flicks, he was golden. And with producer Joel Silver, he could get whatever he wanted made. He just couldn't lose.
I guess we see who wears the penis in his family, huh?
Enter Hudson Hawk, originally written by Die Hard scribe Stephen E. D'Souza, but then reworked by Heathers writer Daniel Waters. With the director of that movie, Heathers, Michael Lehman, actually being hired as a director, Hudson Hawk proved to be an unwieldy mix of genres.
Because Danger, Doc, is my middle name.
Part comedy, part action, part sci-fi, part musical.
But we'll travel along, hit it and he's singing a song, side by side.
And all-camp audiences stayed away in droves. It only grossed $17 million compared to the $65 million budget, while it also took the year's Razzie Award for Worst Picture.
Considering your status, I will say, slurp my butt.
Yet, on home video and cable, it developed something of a cult following. So in this one, Bruce Willis plays Eddie Hawkins, aka the Hudson Hawk.
Hawky, you come highly recommended.
A master cat burglar who's been in jail for a long spell. How long? Well, the movie came out in 1990, and as he tells Andie MacDowell, who plays his love interest,
Let's just say I never saw E.T.
determined to go straight, he's nonetheless blackmailed by the psychotic Darwin, played by Richard E. Grant,
What can I tell you? I'm the villain.
and Minerva Mayflower, played by Sandra Bernhard,
Don't hate me, baby.
to undertake a series of jobs in Rome involving the components of a machine that was designed by Leonardo da Vinci that can convert lead into gold. The movie co-stars Danny Aiello, James Coburn,
I've always had a soft spot in my heart for Rome. I did my first barehanded strangulation here.
and Andie MacDowell as perhaps one of the strangest love interests of all time, because you see, she's playing a nun. That's right, Hudson Hawk's girlfriend in the movie is a nun.
I must speak with the dolphins now.
Now, I first saw Hudson Hawk on the Canadian version of HBO, First Choice, which was later called the Movie Network. Despite being rated R in the US, on First Choice, Hudson Hawk was kind of considered a pretty light movie, and it only merited an A rating, which was basically the PG-13 of Canada, meaning it could air during the daytime. R-rated movies were only airing after 9 p.m. Thus, in the summer of 1992, I saw Hudson Hawk over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, because it aired almost every day in the afternoon. And hey, I mean, I loved it. I thought it was great. And to this day, I really still do have kind of a fondness for it.
Bunny Bobble.
To understand Hudson Hawk, you kind of have to get into Bruce Willis's head at the time.
Hey, Mr. Hawk, I got your stamps.
Good, Yogi.
We think of him now as kind of somewhat humorless, but back then he was this wise guy action hero. In fact, throughout much of the film, he seems to be playing Hudson Hawk as an extension of his Bruno character, which is a long-forgotten chapter of his career where he tried to pull a Don Johnson and became a pop star, releasing an infamous album called The Return of Bruno, where he adopted a pop star character. Garth Brooks did the same silly thing years later for The Life of Chris Gaines, and no, it didn't work then either. Even still though, his song Respect Yourself was a pretty big hit, And if you look at Hudson Hawk and you look at his character in the Bruno video, they look kind of the same, right? They got the little vest going, they got the earring, the same haircut. I mean, he is basically playing Bruno mixed with David Addison from Moonlighting. He's kind of a wise guy. To audiences expecting John McClane, Bruce Willis and Danny Aiello waltzing around singing Bing Crosby songs to each other might have been a put-off. Yet the movie is campy fun with a breakneck pace and a witty script.
You want me to rape him?
It's crazy that the movie ever got made because, I mean, in some ways you could see that they were trying to make kind of a Pink Panther-esque type movie, but Bruce Willis is no Inspector Clouseau and wasn't going to be made to be nearly as idiotic a character as Peter Sellers was.
You won't be attending that hat convention in July.
If anything, it's a lot like one of those 1940s road movies, the kind that Bob Hope and Bing Crosby used to make, where they were kind of friends that would get along in these wacky shenanigans all over the world and would turn to the camera and wink at the camera. That said, this was R-rated, cost $65 million, and had massive action scenes, including a massive body count, which is kind of strange to see in such a humorous film. Indeed, it's an oddball mix of genres.
Bunny, ball.
And if it's like anything, it's actually a bit like James Coburn, who co-stars in the movie as one of the villains, Our Man Flint series from the 60s, in which he played this kind of super spy knockoff of James Bond who is so capable that it's actually kind of funny.
Now let's go down this way. No, maybe we better go this way. Okay.
The fact is, Hudson Hawk, as much as I love Bruce Willis, is kind of an ego-drenched mess. But it's also a wildly entertaining one, and Willis lights up the screen with his megawatt charisma. This is peak Bruce Willis. He was absolutely at his best when he made this movie. And you could see why he became such an icon. I mean, you can't take your eyes off him. You're on his side, you know? It's Hudson Hawk, Eddie, Bruce Willis, cracking wise, fighting bad guys, showing up the man. Hudson Hawk would never get made on this scale nowadays, but it's kind of bold and experimental for a Hollywood blockbuster, and I think it deserves more appreciation than it had. Now, apparently the shoot was kind of a mess, with Daniel Waters going and apparently spending months in Rome trying to put this film together. Richard E. Grant wrote a biography called With Nails, in which he talks all about how much of a disaster it was. This really is kind of a wild movie. It has, weird sound effects. It's got really heightened fight scenes that are kind of slapsticky. It's got a lot of music. Again, Andie MacDowell as a nun. Don't quite know what they were thinking there.
What does the color blue taste like? Bobo knows.
It even kills the dog at the end in kind of a humorous way.
Bunny! Bobo!
I mean, the film just falls apart. Plus, it's got this long flashback with Leonardo da Vinci. Being, read to us by a drunken narrator just doesn't make any sense. I don't know what they were going for when they made this movie. They probably thought that it was really funny when it was being done, but it's not. And in fact, it probably works a lot better as an action movie than it does as a comedy. So they should have toned that down a little bit and amped up the action. But even still, what remains of the action is pretty good. And there's a great action beat that couples insane stunt work, ultraviolence, and slapstick, where basically Bruce Willis's Hudson Hawk is on a gurney going through traffic.
Hey, mister! Are you gonna die?
Wow!
It's odd, but hey, I mean, who doesn't want to see the rest of the film after watching this scene? He even grabs a cigarette at one point and ditches it and says,
Beto!
I remember thinking that was really cool as a kid, and I would do that all the time with, whatever I was chewing on, even though, of course, I didn't smoke a cigarette. Closest I came at the time was chocolate cigarettes. While Hudson Hawk certainly isn't Die Hard, to me it is still a vintage, awesome entry into Bruce Willis's filmography, and a movie that I really still have a blast revisiting. And I think that Bruce Willis himself kind of has a soft spot for it, because when it came out on DVD about 10 or 15 years ago, he was all over the bonus features, even singing a couple of the songs, because he co-wrote the theme song, Hudson Hawk. It's a lot of fun, but boy oh boy, I bet working on the film was a lot less fun than it is watching it. But of course, Bruce Willis, now that he's retired, we have precious few of his really good movies to go back and rewatch and just enjoy over and over again. And for me, Hudson Hawk is up there in the pantheon. But if you don't feel the same, make sure to let us know in the comments.